What if you think I'm Rabbi Wyne, the young Israeli of Las Vegas? Maybe yes, maybe no, probably yes. But today is the holiday of Purim, one of the most important days of the entire Jewish year. Stick with us and we're going to have a lot of fun, because every week on Life is Great, we examine a new universal value derived from Judaism, and today is no different. But yes, it is very different as we reveal the secrets behind the mask. Welcome back. My name is Rabbi Wyne, this time unmasked. All right? Have you ever heard the expression, the whole Megillah? Well, let me tell you. Right here is the whole Megillah. It refers to the Megillah Esther, the book of Esther. Now, the book of Esther chronicles the story that is the foundation of the holiday of Purim. And as I mentioned before, the holiday of Purim is one of the happiest days of the year. No, it probably is the happiest day of the year. And it's a day that if we understand the holiday of Purim, we will understand how to see God in our lives when we don't normally see God in our lives. We will understand how to overcome one of the major obstacles to happiness that most people are trapped by. We will also understand what it really means to capture the secret of redemption. If I feel trapped, how do I get out of it? And we will also understand what it truly means to live as a godly human being. Oh, it's big. As a matter of fact, in Jewish tradition, today is a more important day than even Yom Kippur. That's right. The Day of Atonement, everybody knows. Every Jew goes to synagogue on the Day of Atonement. But I would tell you, if you're going to pick one day to go to synagogue, make that day today, Purim. Because on Purim, that's a day where we celebrate God revealing himself even when he is a little hidden. Let me share with you the story of Purim and then some of the deep insights into the book of Esther, and you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. I am holding up to you a Jewish Bible. A Jewish Bible, we refer to it as Tanakh. It comprises three parts: the Torah, the prophets, and the writings. Some people refer to this as the Old Testament. Now, one of the books contained in the writings is the book of Esther. The book of Esther picks up in the story in the year 355 BCE. And in that story, there's a man, he's a king, his name is Achashverosh. He is basically the king over the entire world. And he decides to have a party. It goes for 180 days. And he invites all the people of the world to come and enjoy this party. And included in all the people in the world are the Jews. And the Jews come to this party and they have a great time. The problem with the Jews coming to this party and having a great time is that one of their leading rabbis, Mordechai, tells them, don't go to this party. Because the reason Achashverosh held the party was in celebration of the ultimate defeat of the Jewish people. That's right. See, 61 years prior to this party, the Jewish homeland was ransacked. The temple was destroyed and burned, and the Jews were scattered throughout the entire world. Well, there was a prophecy at that time, and that prophecy was the Jewish people would be exiled for 70 years. The king Achashverosh said, hey, we're up to year 70. We're not. We're actually only up to the year 61. That's important. And then what happens? He throws this big, lavish party. The Jews at that time resigned themselves to their fate, saying, I guess we won't be redeemed. Achashverosh shows up. He's dressed in the high priest garments. He's using the temple vessels as his wine goblet. He gets totally drunk. And in that drunken stupor, he orders his wife, Vashti, the queen, to appear immodestly before his friends. She refuses, and the king has her executed. The people come to King Achashverosh and say, Achashverosh, you need a queen. So he has a beauty pageant, basically, and a Jewish girl, Esther, Mordechai's niece, is in essence appointed to be Achashverosh's queen. Well, now that she's the queen, things seem to be moving along. But Achashverosh has his right-hand man. His right-hand man, the viceroy over the whole world's name is Haman. Haman is a bad guy. Haman is a descendant of Amalek. And Amalek is a tribe of the Jew haters. Amalek captures the essence of evil, of anti-Jew, anti-morality, anti-God. And Haman decides to go forward and try and rule the world. He demands that everyone bows down to him. And people do bow down to him, except for one man, Mordecai. Mordecai, the Jew, says, I don't bow down to people. I don't bow down to evil people. And Haman is so infuriated with the fact that Mordecai refuses to bow down to him that he goes to King Ahasuerus and convinces Ahasuerus to set a decree of genocide. When would that decree be? That decree would come about on the 14th day of the Hebrew month of Adar. Now, the reason it was picked that day is because Haman was a master of fate. And he did a lottery. He drew lots, Purim, which is the name of the holiday, and he determined that the 14th day of the month of Adar is a day that the Jewish people have no protection. Well, it goes out to all the king's provinces that day will be a day that every last man, woman, and child in the Jewish nation will be killed. The Jewish people are beside themselves. They don't know what to do. It turns out that Mordecai sends a message to Queen Esther saying, hey, Esther, you've got to pick up, you've got to go in to the king, and you've got to plead on behalf of the Jewish people. Let me share with you what Esther says. In verse 10, Esther told Hasach and ordered him to return to Mordecai, saying, all the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court, who is not summoned, his law is one, to be put to death, except for the one whom the king shall extend the gold scepter so that he may live. Now I have not been summoned to come to the king for these past 30 days. In other words, Esther says to Mordecai, no, I'm not going to the king. I refuse to put my own life on the line. Let's see what Mordecai said to Esther. They related Esther's words to Mordecai. Then Mordecai said to the reply to Esther, do not imagine in your soul that you will be able to escape the king's palace any more than the rest of the Jews. For if you persist in keeping silent at a time like this, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from another place, while you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether it was just for such a time as this that you attained the royal position. Mordecai's response is, Esther, don't think you're going to escape. You're a Jew. And when it comes to being a Jew is always a Jew. Esther, you have to know, relief and deliverance will come from another place. Because Mordecai understands the Jewish people are eternal. But Esther, if you don't step forward right now, then you will perish. Deliverance and relief will come from some other place. And by the way, who knows? Maybe the whole reason you're queen is just for this particular case. Well, Esther turns around. As the story continues, she asks everyone, all the Jews, to fast for 3 straight days before she goes in to meet the king. She goes in to meet the king. The king extends the gold scepter. She comes and turns to the king and says, if it pleases the king, then let's have a banquet. You, Haman, and myself tomorrow. Well, Haman turns around and he goes back to his house and he recounts all of the wonderful things about his life. He recounts the fact that he has sons and he has wealth and he has power. And even Queen Esther invited him, and only him and the king, to her private banquet. But then he says, all of this means nothing to me as long as Mordecai the Jew refuses to bow down. Well, when he comes back the next day, he's sitting, what can I do to Mordecai the Jew? He erects gallows 50 cubits high, and his plan is to go and to hang Mordecai. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, that night, Ahasuerus, the king's, his sleep is disturbed. And he says, why is my sleep disturbed? Something must be going on. They look back in the book of Chronicles and they realize that many years beforehand, Mordecai had actually saved the king's life. He came up with information that revealed a plot to assassinate the king, and those people were executed. The king says, what was done to Mordecai? Was he rewarded? He say, no, nothing ever happened to Mordecai to reward him. Well, just as they decide to reward Mordecai, Haman walks in to the king's palace. And Haman walks in, and before he has a chance to speak, the king says to Haman, hey Haman, tell me, what would the king do if the king wanted to honor somebody? What do you think should be done for that man? Haman is dumbfounded. He takes Mordecai, parades him around and gives him a tremendous amount of honor in the king's capital. Well, now comes time for the second banquet. In the second banquet, there's just Haman, King Ahasuerus, and Queen Esther. And the king says to Esther, Esther, what would you like? Up to half the king's riches you can have. And Esther says, Your Majesty, I would not have said anything, but there is a man out there who wants to kill me and my people. And I'm relying only on you, king, to save me. And the king is infuriated. Who would want to kill my queen and her people? And then Esther says, it's him. It's Haman. The king immediately commands that Haman be hanged on the gallows that he erected for Mordecai. And Mordecai be elevated up in the place of Haman. And now Mordecai is the viceroy. Mordecai goes, and because a decree from the king can never be eradicated, they create another decree that allows the Jews to take vengeance on all the anti-Semites. And sure enough, the day before Purim, in all the king's provinces, the Jews go and they take vengeance and kill the anti-Semites, and the Jewish people are saved. At this point, Mordecai, who is now the viceroy, he decrees that there should be a holiday called Purim forever. And in this holiday, the Jewish people will rejoice over their salvation. So let's look back at the book. Let's look back at the story and understand some of the major insights to this holiday. Why is it such a happy day? Why is it a day greater than Yom Kippur? Why is every time I say the word Haman, someone is yelling and screaming? What's going on here? Okay, so let's go through them. There are a few things. The first thing that we have to know is that on Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, what do? We fast. We say, God, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And maybe God forgives us. Purim is a day where we celebrate that God is filled with salvation for us. Where did the salvation come from? See, there's one person, there's one entity that is not mentioned in the entire book of Esther. Who's that? The Lord. God's name is not mentioned at all in the book of Esther. As a matter of fact, it's very curious. It's a book of the Bible. Where's God? That's the point. That's the point of the masks. That's the point of the costumes. The idea is that in our lives there are many times where we don't feel God is present, but God is always present. And we understand, when you look back at the entire story, which really takes place over about 9 years, the Jewish people are saved due to a very curious set of circumstance. And we enjoy and we rejoice over the fact to understand, you know what, God is running the world. See, Haman set the day to destroy the Jews based on lots, on luck. He said, you know what day in the stars do the Jews have no favor in the eyes of God? And we tell the world, if you ever want to go up against God, you're not going to make it. Because God runs the world to every little detail. So never think there's a time when God is not present, for God is always present. Why is it that it's such a happy day? It's a happy day because the Jewish people recognize that God is totally involved in their lives. And it's much better to get close to God through joy and happiness than it is through sadness and repentance. Redemption is the idea that a person sometimes feels trapped. They feel oppressed. How do you get out of that? Let's go back to the beginning of the story. Where did the decree of genocide against the Jews come from? Well, it came from the fact that the Jews showed up at that party. Remember the first party that King Ahasuerus held? And the Jews just kind of went to the party. Now remember, Mordecai said, don't go to the party. That party is celebrating your destruction. But the Jews resigned themselves, saying, hey, listen, I guess we're just kind of stuck. We got to do that. So the fact the Jews moved away from listening to their rabbi, they moved away from the understanding of we are the chosen people, a people that is charged with the obligation to be a light unto the nations, to be a holy nation, to bring godliness and morality to the world. The Jews kind of forgot about that. So therefore God said, you know what? Let me shake the tree. Let me wake you up a little bit and put out that decree of genocide. How did we get out of the decree of genocide? Well, there were a few things that happened. The first thing that happened was God brought Esther to be the queen of Persia. Mordecai told Esther at the beginning, don't reveal the fact you're Jewish. Keep it a secret. It was only at the right time when Esther listened to her rabbi, listened to Mordecai, and realized, listen, I have to take direction from the people who understand Torah. So then the entire Jewish people fasted and prayed for 3 days. And they all re-accepted the Torah and re-accepted their charge to be a chosen people, to bring goodness into the world, to be a light into the nation. When we repented, then the Almighty said, okay, you know what? Let's remove the decree. In other words, we put ourselves in problems when we move away from God's law. We correct the problems when we dedicate ourselves to listening to those who know and teach Torah, and then investing ourselves in fulfilling the Almighty's law, the Almighty's commandments. Another beautiful aspect that we see over here is you'll notice that even before the decree of genocide was set forth, Esther was moved into the position of being queen. This, our Jewish tradition teaches us, that whenever we have a problem in life, God has already brought in the solution into potential. In other words, the Hebrew of that is that God brings the refuah, the healing, before the makkah, before the plague. So therefore, if you're ever in a position where you have a problem, you have a feeling of oppression in your life, you have to know the Almighty has already set forth the solution to that problem. We just have to open ourselves up spiritually in order to receive that solution, in order to receive that blessing, the blessing of redemption. And now we have to understand how to overcome one of the greatest obstacles that anybody has in life. Remember when I was telling you about how Haman shows up and he says, oh, you know, I have all this wealth, I have sons, I have power, I have everything, but nothing is to me. Nothing. All that is nothing to me as long as Mordecai the Jew refuses to bow down. That is what we call evilness. See, Haman had so many blessings. But at the same time, he refused to appreciate those blessings because one thing for him was going wrong. Has that ever happened to you? Has it ever happened to you where you look at your life and say, oh boy, I have so many blessings in my life, but there's one thing that's so under my skin. There's no way I can even begin to appreciate all the blessings in my life? The secret to overcoming this obstacle is to make sure that we focus on our blessings and we don't allow the difficult things in our life to overshadow all of the wonderful blessings. You know, my Rabbi Weinberg, tells a great story about one time you walk into your office building in a in a high rise in Manhattan, and you see a business partner. He's standing on the ledge. He's ready to jump off. So you say, hey, listen, don't jump. And the business partner says, hey, my life stinks. And you say, your life can't be that bad. He goes, no, my life stinks. My wife left me. My children hate me. I've gone broke. I got a bum leg. There's no way for anything good to happen in my life. You're listening to him and you say, boy, your life really does stink. But you just can't tell him, you can't push him off the cliff. So you say, hey, wait a second. Let me just ask you one question. If you were blind, would everything be even worse? The guy says, well, yeah, if I was blind, everything probably would be worse. He goes, well, open your eyes. Look, you can see. Do you think if God gave you sight after you're blind, you think you'd walk around and see the sights for a little bit? The guy says, probably would. So you say to your business partner, look, you can see. Appreciate what you do have right now. So the truth is everyone has problems. And those problems, sometimes we allow them to override. Like Haman, we allow the problems to override the blessings in our life. We can't do that, ever. We have to stop and focus on our blessings and remember our blessings every single day, even though there are problems. Now you might be wondering, why is it that somebody's yelling and screaming every time I say the name Haman? That's because we have a tradition that Haman, his name should be blotted out because he's such an evil person. Because we've got to dedicate ourselves to celebrating goodness and not allow negative things coming into the world. Sometimes, there are some very wise people. They said, we're not going to speak out the names of people that are cause destruction in the world, of terrorists. We're not even going to say that person's name because we don't want to give them credit. It's the same thing over here. We don't want to give credit to the man who was masterminding the destruction of the Jewish people. Okay, so the real question is, how do we now celebrate this wonderful day of Purim? How do we remember all of these beautiful concepts? Well, there are basically 4 commandments in Purim to celebrate. The first one is to read the book of Esther in the evening and again in the morning. And we will be even reading the book of Esther at Young Israel Aish of Las Vegas. If you happen to be in Las Vegas, swing on by the synagogue, and we will be reading it later on this afternoon. Not only that, but you have to have a Purim Suda, a party. This is a party that the Jewish law is a person has to get so inebriated, that's right, drunk, so that they don't even know the difference between blessed is Mordechai and cursed be Haman. In other words, when we drink and when we enjoy our friends, we begin to see insight into the world that is usually hidden and closed up from us. Talmud tells us that one of the ways that secrets come out of us is in goes the wine, out comes the secrets. We can see things in our life when we drink a little bit that we don't always see. So you shouldn't get too drunk. You should just have a couple of drinks, get a little tipsy, and you'll begin to see the Almighty a little more in your life after reading the story. The next thing we do is we give charity. We give charity to the poor. As a matter of fact, you should give to 2 poor people, at least to 2 poor people, an entire meal. And that because how can you really enjoy life and celebrate God's love and God's salvation for the Jewish people if you look out and there are poor people amongst your nation and they are suffering? And the next thing is that we give gifts of food to our friends. That's 2 kinds of gifts to our friends, because this increases a sense of brotherhood. I just want to close off with this one last point. The holiday of Purim is so magnificent. It's magnificent because it teaches us to see God in a world that He's usually hidden. The holiday of Purim is magnificent because it reminds us that when we move away from the Almighty and we don't listen to those who learn Torah and teach Torah, then the Almighty gives us problems. But we always have the opportunity to come back to the Almighty. It's a magnificent day because it teaches us that God sends forth the healing. He sends forth the solution before the problems. It's a magnificent day because it teaches us, just like Esther, that we cannot hide from our national mission or our personal mission. But every one of us needs to know, what are we living for? What is the purpose of our lives? And we need to embrace that purpose and live with zest and vitality in order to make sure we bring the most amount of goodness in the world. We are reminded on Purim to focus on our blessings and don't sweat the small stuff. Don't even sweat the big stuff. Because with the Almighty's hand behind us, we can accomplish everything. And finally, one last point. The holiday of Purim reminds us to love each other, to come closer to each other. That if we truly relate to each other as the Almighty's children, then the holiday of Purim tells me I should have a party with my friends. I should take care of the poor. I should give gifts to my friends. And I should continuously learn about what it truly means to be a great person. I want to wish you the happiest of Purims. I want to invite you to come by my synagogue if you're ever in Las Vegas, to Young Israel Aish of Las Vegas. I promise to make you feel welcome, and I promise to give you an inspiring message that will help you live the best life possible.
Hi, my name is Hadassah Lefkowitz. My husband Jay and I are this year's Partners of the Year at the Young Israel H Reach for the Stars Gala taking place on March 30th. This shul, the Rabbi Show, Life is Great, has dramatically changed our life, our children's lives, and it would not be the same without Young Israel H and Life is Great. Please go to the Rabbi Show, click in, donate, support the programs that Young Israel H and the Rabbi Show sponsor. Your life too will be great and meaningful, and you'll appreciate all the good that you're doing, not just for yourself, but for our community. Trust me, life is great. Thanks to Rabbi Wyne and the Rabbi Show. Go there.
Want more wine? Turn your radio to AM 720 KDWN or go online to therabbishow.com to hear The Rabbi Show starting right after the news at 9 a.m.
Thank you so much for joining me today in Life is Great. You know, there are so many people that are benefiting from this television program, from the Rabbi Show radio program, our YouTube broadcasts, and reading my book, Life is Great. I want to thank all of you, and I want you to know that the only way we can continue to distribute and to do these programs are through your generous contributions to therabbishow.com. So I'd like to encourage you today to go to therabbishow.com and make some kind of donation. Everything is appreciated in order to help us continue to spread these positive values and enrich and enhance other people's lives. Thank you. My rabbi told me the most important commandment is to live life with joy as much as possible. Because if you have joy and enthusiasm and passion about life, if you really feel the Almighty's love at every corner, so then you will have the direction and the enthusiasm and the energy to fulfill all of the other commandments. When you step into the world of Young Israel Aish, and you are welcomed by the right kind of community for you, so then all of a sudden you have support. You have support in terms of your personal growth, your spiritual growth. You have people you can share the good times with in your life, and people who you can share the difficult times in your life. And the result that we've seen over and over again is that people who become part of our community, they just have a much greater sense of life fulfillment. They have a sense of friendship, of connection with community, of connection with others. When you walk in that door, you will be greeted with a smile and come straight up to me and say hello. You don't have to be bashful or shy. No one else around here is. You just walk up, say hello, introduce yourself to me. So I really hope that any person that, whether they read the book, they listen to the radio show, they come to Young Israel Aish, whether it's every single day or once a year, that they acquire a piece of wisdom that forever enhances and enriches their lives.